Well, this was one of those weeks on General Hospital where the show remembered exactly how to have fun with a long game. The audience finally got the answer. It's been circling for months. Willow shot Drew. Not with a villain monologue or a dramatic confession, but through flashbacks that kept tripping over her testimony, until the truth forced its way out in her mind. It also answered the lingering medical mystery of why Drew survived. Willow didn't finish the job because she's an amateur. If she'd actually meant to end Congressman Cutthroat, she would have aimed higher. Frankly, the headshot would have been merciful compared to the slow unraveling he's currently engineering for himself. The courtroom chaos was matched by some surprisingly elegant detective work elsewhere. Trina and Kai stepping into amateur sleuth mode was one of the week's subtle wins. They've aged out of the teen scene, so watching them use memory, sound, and instinct to figure out who the ringtone belonged to was a nice entrance into young adulthood. The audience was allowed to connect the dots along with them, making their journey more fun. That said, there's still a question hanging over them. Trina has grown sharper, braver, and more complicated. Kai means well, but he's almost too clean for the world she's learning how to move through. A little edge wouldn't hurt. Poor Charles tends to eat the purely righteous alive. Add Britt walking back into the hospital with her license in hand. Laura feeling the walls closing in as Sidwell tightens his grip. Tracy realizing a beat too late she'd been played. And Carly doing what Carly does best by physically reminding Drew to mind his tone were just a smattering of the good incidents. It was a week where the story moved because characters made choices, not because the plot said it was time. Not for everyone yet, but enough to make things very interesting. Willow's flashbacks didn't play like a grand confession. They played like memory, betrayal. 1 second, she's insisting she never touched Edward's gun. The next, the show is calmly rolling tape of her opening the case, lifting it out, and treating that denial like it never stood a chance. No thunder, no melodrama. Just the soft horror of watching someone lie to themselves in real time. The gun wasn't some random prop either. It was Edward Quartermain's heavy with history. Old money menaced? The kind of object that already knows it's going to ruin lives the moment it enters a scene. Then came the night itself. Stitched together in pieces she kept trying to outrun. The car stopped. The glove compartment opened. The decision happened before she could name it as one. By the time Drew was on the floor, the show wasn't asking if she did it. It was asking why she keeps pretending she doesn't remember. That's what made it land. Not the shot, but the after. Willow swore she didn't know where she went, while the flashbacks quietly correct her. And when we finally see her pull the trigger, it's less about violence and more about collapse. This wasn't a villain turn. It was a woman hitting the end of the rope, she insists, she's still holding, even as it slips clean through her hands. Carly and Jack were talking about the fact that Valentine must have someone helping him stay hidden. Carly then asked, who in their right mind would help Valentine Casadini? The irony about her statement was not lost on me. Well, this is poor Charles. After all, where helping Valentine has historically been a hobby, not a deal breaker. Britt later filled Brad in on her run-in with Jason, describing a genuinely good conversation that ended in a kiss. When Brad asked what happened next, Britt deadpanned. Nothing. Tracy blew in like a hurricane, demanding to know who finished off the fruitcake. So, that kinda killed the mood. Brad didn't miss a beat, offering the kind of wisdom only he can. Of course, fruitcake is emotional chaos in food form. It was the rare exchange that managed to be both absurd and oddly perfect. Brad was trying to steer Britt away from Jason's orbit. He explained how different the two were. But the two of you are just so different. I mean, Jason has this code of honor, and you, my dear friend, have a tendency to lie like a rug. Instead of scolding her, though, he reframed it as a strength, adding, honesty is so boring and played out. It was classic, Brad, sharp, affectionate, and entirely correct in ways no one else would dare to say out loud. Justine walked into court, dressed like someone who came prepared to win, without raising her voice. The deep burgundy suit fit exactly how work clothes should, sharp at the shoulders, streamlined and easy to move in. The matching top kept it cohesive without trying to steal focus. Her hair was pulled back, practical and out of the way. The kind of choice you make so it never needs revisiting. Nothing ornamental, just practical, focused, and quietly confident. It was a deliberate choice. Not power dressing in the obvious sense, but precision dressing. The kind of outfit that signals discipline, authority, and patience, which made it even more effective as she'll let others unravel around her. This is an image of the gun that Willow used on Drew. It's not a dramatic, silver screen villain gun. This is a respectable gun, the kind that sits quietly in a wooden case, smells faintly of oil and dust, and has never once needed to prove anything. A Smith & Wesson military and police-style revolver is the firearm equivalent of Edward Quartermain. Himself, old money, widely trusted, historically important, and deeply unimpressed by chaos. It's the gun cops carried for decades. Soldiers relied on, and collectors kept because it represented order, not impulse. Which is exactly why it's such an unnerving choice here. Willow didn't grab something flashy or personal. She took a piece of institutional history and used it in a moment of emotional freefall. The contrast does the heavy lifting. This wasn't rage with a bang. It was denial with a trigger pull. And frankly, Edward would have hated that. This was one of those moments where General Hospital didn't shout, it just adjusted its eyesight. Willow's on the phone in the foreground, talking to Wiley. And then the focus slides back to Trina and Kai as the ringtone realization hits. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Not Michael's. Not even close. The rack focus does the thinking for us, letting realization spread across their faces, without a single line of dialogue spelling it out. Kai hears it first, Trina follows. A half-second later, and suddenly the whole case tilts on something as small and domestic as a kid's ringtone. It's neat, a little smug, and deeply satisfying. No courtroom theatrics, no raised voices. Just the show trusting its audience to connect the dots while the camera politely steps aside and lets the truth come into view. I have to say, I thought for sure that when Jacinda was called into court, while carrying the bag full of money she got from Christina, she was going to get bagged for perjury. Then, as she was arrested, they would find the money, and everyone would think it was a payoff. From Michael, I'm glad that didn't actually happen, and she and Michael connected and even later kissed. They're cute together, and I'd like to see where this relationship goes. It's going to be an uphill battle for her as a former sex worker, and that will be what makes her story so interesting. At the end of Thursday's episode, after Willow gave her testimony, Justine and Dante discussed it for a bit. Dante asked her what she thought, and a surprised Justine stated, Willow didn't break. Drew cost her children, and I thought if I pushed that button, I could get her to crack, but it didn't work. If anything, the jury may feel sorry for her now. She may have just saved herself. Justine's expression told a different story than her words. This wasn't relief, it was recognition. Willow didn't crack because she's learned how not to, and that's where things start to feel dangerous. The show isn't arguing that Willow is evil or irredeemable. It's suggesting she's capable of the same internal compartmentalizing that defines Nell. Different intent, same muscle. The longer Willow relies on that control, the easier it becomes to justify whatever comes next. I was absolutely yelling when Wiley went for his phone to call Willow. In what universe does a woman who's been courted to have zero contact with her kids still have her number sitting pretty in her son's phone? Michael, sir, delete the contact, burn the phone, throw it in the harbor, I said. Own my hypocrisy, because a week ago, I was already crossing my fingers that this exact scenario would be the reveal. Call it a plot device if you want. When it works, and this one was spectacular. For a while, I genuinely thought that shooter might be Portia or Curtis, but the longer Willow spiraled, the clearer it became. The denial, the emotional gymnastics. The way she's openly used Drew as both shield and sword to survive this case. None of it felt accidental. By the time the flashbacks rolled in, it wasn't shocking so much as grimly satisfying. I'm relieved that at least we know the truth. Now, the real fun comes next, especially if Willow walks. Double jeopardy means she can't be tried again, and that's where things get deliciously dangerous. The smirk on her face when Drew lost his mind during court revealed the real Willow hiding beneath the surface. Because if Willow is free, legally cleared, and still hiding what she did, that's when the real unraveling begins. The Nell echoes. Stop being subtext, and start becoming behavior. And now that the show has quietly retconned in weapons training, I'm just saying, if this turns into a slow burn transformation instead of a quick redemption, we could be staring at the rise of the next Heather Weber. And honestly, I'd watch every second of that chaos. What makes this week stick with you?